So I'm originally dispatched from the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, MHLW, but I'm now working in the International Liaison Officer of PMDA, Pharmaceuticals and Medical Device Agency. It is my great pleasure to be given the opportunity to talk about the Japanese landscape, about the orphan drugs and orphan medical device, and recent Japanese activities. But before starting my presentation this time, on behalf of the Japanese government and Japanese citizens, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the US government, US military services, and the US citizens for their heartfelt sympathy and great support to the current difficult situation in Japan after the March 11th earthquake, tsunami, and the disaster. Thank you very much. I mentioned at first that the views and opinions expressed in the following PowerPoint slides are my personal views, and they do not necessarily represent the formal position of PMD and MHW. So pointer is, sorry, this one? This one, yeah. So this is my presentation outline. First, I explain the basic information about the current development project of orphan drugs and devices by the MHW and agency PMDA and National Institute in Japan. And I also show the situation of the designation, grant aid, and approval of orphan drugs. Then I would explain the recent activities for the development promotion project on an approval and off-label drugs in high medical need, including the development of pediatrics. So this is today's presentation, and it is almost lunchtime, therefore I run as quickly as possible. This slide briefly shows the This slide briefly shows the history of orphan drug and device promotion project and its statutes. In 1979, Japanese government started the grant research funding for the development of orphan drugs and rare diseases. In 1993, Japan made an amendment of Pharmaceutical Affairs Law to introduce the system of orphan drugs designation, grant aid, and tax deduction. Based on the amendment of the law by the Parliament, the Orphan Drug Device Development Promotion Project has started as a national government support program for the R&D of orphan products. Most of the Japanese statutes in general consist of law, ordinance of ministry of enforcement, and notification. In the case of orphan drug system, the notification explains the criteria for designation and incentives for orphan drug research and development. So the criteria of orphan drug designation in Japan have three requirement aspects. The first one is the number of the patients expected as target population for use of the product in Japan. The second one is whether the product has high priority in healthcare needs. That means no alternative drugs or medical interventions is available at this moment, so-called for unmet needs. And extremely higher effect or safety is expected compared to the already approved existing products, so-called with significant benefit. The third one is a high possibility of development of the product with appropriate feasible development plan. In 2006, MHW amended the ordinance to specify the method of calculation of the number of patients for orphan designation. Both two criteria defines a way of considering the number of the users of the preventive vaccines products at the moment of their development. The first criteria is that the current case of preventable diseases is rare in Japan, and limited number of specific group might be considered at the outbreak in the the other areas. One of the examples is a vaccine for tropical disease. The second criterion is the case of newborn infectious diseases such as pandemic influenza. That is the possibility of its emergence or re-emergence by gene mutation, etc., is likely to have a serious implications on the public health life once it occurs. and the timing and the magnitude of the occurrence are unknown and not occurred yet when the application for orphan designation is submitted while the product is still developing. This amendment facilitates the development of the vaccines, especially the development of H5N1 preparedness vaccines and H1N1 pandemic vaccines. Orphan drug R&D promotion program in Japan gives these 6 kinds of incentives for research and development. Number 1 is administrative and scientific advice. A pre-submission meeting and advice for orphan drug designation application are provided by the Ministry Health Policy Bureau. On the other hand, administrative and scientific advice after the orphan designation until the new drug approval application are performed by the National Institute of Biomedical Innovation, NIBIO. The second one is a grant aid for research and development expenses, which is provided by the NIBIO through its reviewing of the company's application for grant. In fiscal year 2009, approximately $2 million were supplied to 11 companies and for 13 products. The number 3 is a tax deduction. Under the Special Taxation Measures Law, 12% R&D expenses is deductible in one company's income taxation for 3 years. The amount of the R&D expenses is also authorized by the NIBIO. The number 4 is a preferential protocol assistance and priority review by the Pharmaceuticals and Medical Device Agency, PMDA, and MHLW. As one of the pre-marketing scientific advices, PMDA provide a preferential protocol assistance for facilitating an appropriate clinical trial. And after approval application of the orphan drugs, PMDA and MHLW review its application with priority within 6 months regulators' reviewing time. Number 5 is a reduction of the approval application fee. The ordinary new drug application fee is approximately $250,000, but the orphan drugs new drug application fee is about 60% reduced into the $210,000. The number 6 is an extension of the re-examination period by the MHW. The re-examination is a requirement for sponsor to collect safety and efficacy data after the marketing of the new drug approved. And in the case of the orphan drugs and devices, sponsor needs much more time to collect sufficient post-market data. Therefore, the re-examination period for orphan product is extended, but during the re-examination period, a full dossier is required for a generic approval application as well as the original new drug application. Consequently, the generic competitor is usually unable to make abbreviated application during the re-examination period, and this period practically means a so-called market exclusivity period for innovators. This is one of the meaningful incentives. In order to clarify the meaning of these incentives, I briefly explain the outline of the approval review process in Japan. This chart shows the flow of the approval review process of new drug application and the relation of PMDA and MHW. Sponsor submits a new drug application, approval application, and PMDA conducts a conformity audit and scientific reviews. PMDA submits a review report to the Minister of MHW, and MHW makes final judgment on approval after hearing opinions of the advisory body is the council. So this slide indicates the timing of the orphan drug incentives during the drug development process. Generally, around the beginning of the preclinical or clinical study, a company submits the application for the orphan designation and grant, or orphan grant. After receiving the orphan designation, incentives of the advice, grant aid, and tax deduction help development of clinical trial and preparation for approval of application. Application fee reduction and priority reviewing facilitates early approval. Extended re-examination period gives the company longer time to recover the expenses for development.